In the previous lesson, we took the 12 chromatic notes and isolated 7 of them at a time to form major and minor scales. We learned that there is a pattern of whole steps and half steps that is shared by all major scales. Specifically, a major scale up 1 octave consists of 5 whole steps and 2 half steps, and the half steps lie between the 3rd and 4th notes and the 7th and 8th notes. Minor scales have a pattern of their own, but we're going to work just with major for a couple more minutes. So if a song or section of music only uses the notes in a major scale, then you're playing in that major scale's key. For example, if you strictly use the notes in a G major scale to write a song, then your song is in the key of G major. You can quickly describe the notes in a key by using its key signature, which tells what sharps or flats are used in the key. For G, all the notes are natural except for F sharp. So you could say the key signature for the key of G is 1 sharp, F sharp. So the key signature defines the set of notes in a key, and the scale refers to the order of that set going up or down. So let's dig deeper into keys and their key signatures. Knowing about keys will help you understand so much about songwriting and improvisation because they offer you a way of organizing notes that will sound consonant together. It's lines to draw in that will help you make your music sound good from the start. And here are the 3 things I want you to know about keys by the end of this lesson. First of all, I want you to know how to figure out what notes are in a key and how to state the key signature. I want you to know that every major key has a related minor key, and I want you to know the order of sharps and flats as they appear in a key signature. The set of notes in a major scale is the same as those defined by a major key's key signature, so you can use the formula for major scales to identify the notes in different major keys. For example, if I ask you, what notes are in the key of E flat major? You can just tell me what notes are in the E flat major scale and that'll be your answer. So knowing that an E flat major scale will have half steps between the 3rd and 4th and 7th and 8th notes, you can find that an E flat major scale has E flat, a whole step to F, a whole step to G, then a half step to A flat, which by the way we call A flat instead of G sharp, because we try to keep flats and sharps separate, and in this case we're working with an E flat major scale. So we want to stick with flats when we're naming the notes. But yeah, so we go from G to A flat, that's our half step. Now we go from 4 to 5, so we want a whole step to B flat, then a whole step to C, and a whole step to D. And if we want to complete the octave, we take half step from D back to E flat, which is 7 to 8, or 7 back to 1, because E flat and E flat are the same note, but yeah, half step there. So we have E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D. So the key of E flat contains all natural notes except for the B flat, E flat, and A flat, so the key signature would be called 3 flats, or B flat, E flat, and A flat. So now, just to make sure you got that, try one on your own. So tell me, what notes are in the key of B flat major? To find this, you figure out your B flat major scale, which is B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat. So we have all natural notes except for B flat and E flat. So that's your answer right there. And that's one way of figuring out the notes in a key. So just to be clear, the notes in the key of B flat major are B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A. And the key signature is that we have all natural notes except for B flat and E flat. Just like you have major scales and minor scales, you have major keys and minor keys. So major keys and scales generally sound lighter and happier, and minor keys sound a little darker. And every major key has a related minor key that uses the same key signature but treats the notes in a different way to make things darker. For example, the key of C major contains the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So its key signature is just natural notes, no sharps or flats. The key of C major prioritizes C as the home bass note to which everything is going to revolve around. So everything's going to resolve to that home bass note. In music theory, the home bass note is called the tonal center. So throughout a section of music in the key of C, you'll feel a sense of gravity pulling you back to the tonal center, which is the note C, which is similar to what happens when you play the C major scale up and down. You get back to C and you're like, I'm done, good. So here's an example of an excerpt in C major. Now the key of A minor contains the exact same notes as C, since it has the same key signature, which is no sharps or flats, but it prioritizes A as the first note of the A minor scale and as its tonal center. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G is our minor scale, and those are the notes in our A minor key. And while we're in the key of A minor, A is the tonal center. So in other words, throughout a section of music in the key of A minor, A feels like home bass. So here's an excerpt in A minor. You can see how it resolves to that A. Since both C major and A minor have the same key signature, they are related. They just act differently. They resolve to different notes and they have a different mood, but they have the same key signature, which is no sharps or flats. So you can find a major key's relative minor by starting a scale on the sixth note of the key's major scale. So for example, if I ask, what is the relative minor of the key of, let's say, D major? So first you have to find your D major scale, which is going to be D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp. And you can count up. D is 1, E is 2, F sharp is 3, G is 4, A is 5, and B is 6. And that's where your relative minor is going to start, on the sixth note. So the answer, if I ask you, what's the relative minor of D major? The answer is B minor, because B is the sixth note of the D major scale. So here's the sound of a D major scale followed by the sound of the B minor scale. So you can hear how much darker the B minor scale is, even though it uses the same set of notes. Minor scales have half steps between the second and third notes and between the fifth and sixth notes. For example, in an A minor scale, there's a half step between B and C and between E and F. So let's do a quick quiz to make sure all this stuff makes sense. So now I've shown you, how to find the notes in a key. You just go find the major scale for that key. And I've shown you that the relative minor starts on the sixth note of the major key. So let's see if you can use that information to figure out what is the key signature of F major. So what is the key signature for F major? And then also, let's see if you can figure out what is the relative minor for F major. So what's the relative minor to the key of F major? Okay, so we can find the key signature for F major by finding the notes in the F major scale, which are F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E. So the key signature will be all natural notes except for B flat. The relative minor to F major will be based around the 6th note of the F major scale. So if we count up F1, G2, A3, B flat 4, C5, D6, we find that D is the 6th note of F major and the first note of its relative minor, which is going to be D minor. Using this information, we can see that the D minor scale is D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C. So you notice that there is a half step between the 2nd and 3rd and between the 5th and 6th notes of the D minor scale. So between E and F and between A and B flat. Alright, so if you start writing music or playing solos that start in a key, you'll get some good sounds for sure. And that's why they're so useful. They just give you some, as I keep saying, some lines to color in. It takes a while to memorize what notes are in each key, but at least this way you have a system in place for identifying them. The more you think about keys and pay attention to what notes you're playing on your instrument, what keys songs are in, and all that stuff, just being conscious of what's going on in terms of the theory here, the faster all of it will become ingrained in your brain hole. It's a lot like learning multiplication. At first, if someone asks you what's 4 times 4, you might count 4 times, or something like that. But ultimately, over time, it becomes second nature, and that's what we want to have happen here. This is a hefty lesson already, but the last thing I wanted to show you is a helpful pattern that exists within key signatures. And this is where I think all the concepts really start to become second nature. So I've written out every major key in order of number of flats and then number of sharps. So F has 1 flat, B flat has 2 flats, E flat has 3, and so on. So on the far left we have the name of the key, in the middle we have the scale written out, and to the right we have the flats or sharps in the key signature. So when you look at all of the keys like this, you can see that flats in the key signature always appear in the order B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, C flat, F, or B, E, A, D, G, C, F, or I like to say bead, G, C, F. That's my quick way of remembering it. I just say the word bead, B, E, A, D, G, C, F. Alright, easy enough. And the sharps will always appear in the order F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp, E sharp, B sharp, or F, C, G, D, A, E, B. And I like to think of that as bead, G, C, F, but backwards. So you might want to come up with like a little word thingy. I forgot what it's called when you make up a word for each letter, but for F, C, G, D, A, E, B, I think it's like furry cats go down and eat bread. That's probably not what it is, but I just think of it as bead, G, C, F backwards. But what this means, though, is that the flats and sharps will always be in the same order when you have a certain number of sharps. So if you have 3 sharps in your key, they will always be F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp. If you have 3 flats in your key, they will always be B flat, E flat, A flat. If you have 4 flats, it'll be B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat. It'll always go up in that order. You'll never have a key like with just F sharp, D sharp, and A sharp in it and nothing else, because that's just not how it ends up working out. So it's really handy to remember bead GCF and bead GCF backwards, because that way if you know that a key has 4 sharps in it, you know that those 4 sharps are always going to be F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp. Alright, so there are a lot of actually interesting patterns when you study this list that you might notice. For example, the second to last flat in a flat key's key signature is also the name of the key. Like for B flat major, if you go from left to right and look at the flats, B flat, E flat, the second to last flat from left to right is B flat, and that's also the name of the key, B flat major. If we go and look at A flat major, from left to right we have B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat. So the second to last flat there is A flat, and we're in the key of A flat major. So that's a cool little pattern that I like to point out, within all this. And for sharps, there's a cool pattern too, which is that the last sharp in the key, so like in the key of A major, the last sharp is G sharp. that last sharp is a half step below the name of the key. So the last sharp in the key of A major is G sharp, which is a half step below A. G sharp up a half step is A, and that's the name of the key. So it's cool. Like in B major, the last sharp is A sharp. A sharp goes up a half step to B. And so when you're in sharp keys, you stick with sharps. So you say A sharp instead of B flat. When you're in flat keys, you stick with flats. That's important to know. And what I did is I attached a link to a poster that has all this information on it that you can print out and put on your wall, because it's so helpful just to be able to study this chart, this information here, and find patterns and start to absorb this information when you get a chance from time to time. And having it on your wall, it's kind of like when I used to have a poster of all the Pokemon, all the original Pokemon labeled. I learned all the names of the Pokemon in the order just because it was there. I'd always be looking at it. It's like, oh, okay, there's Charmander number 1. It's not Pikachu, actually. But, I don't want to lose all the non-Pokemon fans here, because this is supposed to help everyone learn theory. But my point is, just putting it on your wall will be a great help. So I look forward to continuing to help you out with theory, because soon all this stuff will be easy to apply to your guitar. You just gotta get through some of the basics, and then we can start, making music with it. But yeah, I'll see you at the next lesson, which will be on intervals.